NASCAR has promised some really big schedule changes going into the 2024 season. And with the 2023 season seeing the bringing on of the Chicago Street Course as well as North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race, I think that it's well-versed to think that they're probably right. There's gonna be some big moves. And one of those might be The Rock. And I'm not talking about Dwayne Johnson, I'm talking about the Rockingham Speedway in North Carolina. Reporter Brett Baldock had tweeted out that Rockingham Speedway says they have had brief conversations with NASCAR, and it's now up to the sanctioning body to bring back racing if they wish. Discussions are underway about a possible 2024 Cars Tour race on the half-mile Little Rock. This is pretty big, and I think a lot of fans, especially older fans who watched races at Rockingham back in the day, are going to be really excited to hear this. This is the closest that NASCAR's had The Rock to the Cup Series. Yes, it did return for 2 years in the Truck Series, but it was nowhere near the level that it could be to basically be a NASCAR Cup Series race. So this is really big, and with NASCAR's changes, it brings a lot of hope for people. Now, construction crews at the Rockingham Speedway also have just completed repaving the track for $3.5 million. So a lot of money is being put into this, and it's looking like they're getting the track ready to have big league racing back, whether it's the Cars Tour or NASCAR. Rockingham is making moves, and in a lot of ways, this is really big. There's some tracks that NASCAR's tried going to where it's just stagnant. This is moving forward much quicker than anyone could have thought, especially with the ownership group they have being so aggressive. And they also received a total of $9 million in the North Carolina state budget for renovations, whether that be renovations to the track itself, amenities, maybe water, piping, whatever it might be. They are improving the track, and the government funds are behind it as well. So there is a ton going into this. And it brings up a question when it comes to NASCAR racing there. Is it realistic? Well, you may be able to argue yes or no. With the talks and the money involved, I say possibly. This much money and this much renovation will mean a huge push from the track operators getting NASCAR. They're not going to waste this much time and money just to have the Cars Tour. While the Cars Tour is nice, I don't think that this was the grand plan they had. And seeing how the Truck Series did put on some pretty good races there the 2 years they came back, there is a track record to show that this is not just some nostalgia bait track that was good in the 90s and the 2000s and would have withered away over time. This track will wear and tear over the years, and by the time NASCAR gets there at the earliest, the track surface will be at least 2 years old, so they're not going right on the fresh pavement right away. So what are the pros and cons to any kind of plan of bringing The Rock back to NASCAR? Well, let's start with the positive, the pros. First off, there is no other track, like I said, remotely like The Rock. Rockingham is so different when it comes to the way the track is shaped, the banking, the way it wears on tires. Even a fresh repave is probably going to race a lot differently than any other track with a fresh repave. And that's something, like I said, that's very, very important for NASCAR, both on the racing front and the marketing front. And The Rock, being an old school track, is a good way of bringing some of the old school viewers in, while you're also trying to bring new viewers in with other tracks, like the Chicago Street Course, for instance. Now, the uniqueness has been big with NASCAR scheduling, and I'm going to say it again just because it cannot be understated. There is so much that goes into a NASCAR schedule, and nowadays NASCAR is one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse schedules in all of motorsports. When you look at just how different every single track seems to be, it's not the old NASCAR that everyone knew 10 to 15 years ago, full of cookie cutters. That is far and away gone. There's more road courses, it seems like, than cookie cutters anymore. More short tracks being added, a dirt race. Why not The Rock? It's similar, in my opinion, not necessarily to how it races, but in its spot on the schedule possibly, to that of Dover. There's no other track that races like Dover, and similarly, there'd be no other track that would race like The Rock. Now, a big one too is the area wants the racing back. Based on the articles that I've seen from the local area, based on newscasts, it seems like everyone living around the racetrack is asking when NASCAR is coming back, when racing is coming back there. And that's a big difference compared to Chicago and Nashville, who seemingly have been pushing against every single attempt that NASCAR makes at going to the area. Now, with it being a shorter track, it also means that it kind of fits more into modern NASCAR with amenities, track size, everything like that, way more than it did when it was booted off the Cup schedule in 2004. So a fit is pretty good with that. And the North Carolina government has seemed to be behind the effort, so you know there will be powerful people who are going to be pushing for this. And now the cons. The first one is this track has not hosted a NASCAR National Series race in a decade. That is something that is going to make this a bit of a risk for NASCAR. Yes, they raced there in the past, but it's not like this track is familiar to many of the drivers. If you look at the drivers even in the Truck Series now compared to back then, well, it's almost completely night and day different. So it's going to be basically a brand new track. And this would mean that it is 3 tracks alone in North Carolina and 7 tracks in the close vicinity of Virginia and Eastern Tennessee and South Carolina. These being the Rock, of course, North Wilkesboro, Charlotte, Darlington, Martinsville, Richmond, and Bristol. All near each other, all sharing the same fans over what would be more than likely 11 or 12 races. That's not something that's going to look good for people marketing-wise to show half-empty grandstands for all but maybe 2 or 3 of these races. So that's something that's going to hold it back. Now, also, like I said, it's not a surefire hit. We're going to have to see the long-term data with North Wilkesboro, if that's whether that is a one-year flare-up or if that's something that's sustainable over time. And it's had trouble staying afloat. That's something that should be noted too. With it being independent ownership, NASCAR and SMI don't have much of a say in this past signing on. Plus, getting a good date will be difficult, as many previous track contracts and tracks in general are owned by different entities and they get special treatment compared to an independently owned track like the Rock. And even though NASCAR seems open to anything, they are more and more open to branching out to new areas and audiences mostly, rather than the old, which this would cater to. So what's the solution? Well, I say try it. Give it a shot. Put it in the date that Kansas has for its spring race. That way you help the teams a bit. You have Rockingham in North Carolina, Darlington in South Carolina, and then North Wilkesboro in North Carolina, and Charlotte for the 600 in North Carolina. That way, you have a relative homestand for the teams and drivers, since there's only going to be one bye week more than likely in the NASCAR schedules coming up. This helps in a big way to pay back North Carolina also for propping up the Rock in North Wilkesboro, and overall is just a way to kind of appreciate that North Carolina and Charlotte area for what it has done for the industry as a whole. So with that, I want to pass this on to you and ask, do you want Rockingham back on the NASCAR schedule? And if so, how does it happen? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and be sure to watch post-race coverage on my channel after the Clash this weekend. It's going to be a blast. So until next time, have a good one.